Welcome to EPM's Empower Hour Live. This is another wonderful Friday. We are so glad to have you guys involved with us. We love having you guys here every Friday for an hour of empowerment. This week, we are going to welcome a special guest host, Mr. Harold Reed. He is with Matlock. It's his company and he himself. They champion multicultural initiatives and companies. And so he's going to speak with us today about that, the multicultural aspects of just company life. And Harold, am I getting that right?
Yes, that is correct. Thank you so much for the introduction, and a happy early birthday, Blaine. I do work for Matlock. My name is Harold Reed. I'm a group director. I handle communications and strategy there, and have been doing that for the majority of my career. Matlock has been around for the past 35 years this year, and support all things communications, marketing, ad, video, from a multicultural perspective here in Atlanta, and happy and excited to have this conversation with you all today.
Awesome. And so almost your age. You and Matlock are almost the same age, very close.
Sorry, I disassociated for a minute. Yeah, we are.
So multicultural, can you tell us real quick just what that means?
That's having a conversation that brings in all audience, all segments, all backgrounds, regardless of where you're from, what you represent, beliefs, or what have you. So that's everything encompassing. That's the melting pot, essentially. That's how we define multiculturalism. And today we're going to just talk about a few things that allow folks to have those comfortable and uncomfortable conversations, but also create an environment where everyone feels like they can have those conversations openly, without any issue or concern.
That's very crucial, being able to have those open conversations without being easily offended, or taking the wrong cues from it, and leaving the conversation with strife instead of understanding. That's why, like Blaine, him and I have the most open conversations ever. And so me as a Black man, him as a white male, we're able to talk, and it's just love. So
and that's how it should be. Absolutely.
How do you want to kick it off?
So I'm going to share my screen.
Okay, yeah, let's share the screen.
Go.
So this is going to be a different type of Empower Hour Live, because Harold has a presentation for us and an activity for us all to do that's going to be a lot of fun and eye-opening. So if you have an opportunity, pull out a blank sheet of paper, bring out a pen, we'll get there, but we're going to let Harold take over. I just want to say this is going to be fun.
Thank you. Yes.
It's going to be interesting. It's different than we've been doing, so this is going to be awesome.
Yes. Definitely a little bit different from the norm.
So we got our paper here.
We got paper because we're going to do a little challenge towards the end of this, and we encourage all of you guys to join us because you will the challenge, because we'll all learn a little bit about each other, and it's just going to be for fun and games, nothing super serious, but we can definitely learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will start.
Just take away serious. Yeah.
Key takeaway. So I will start the conversation. I am not a professor, so I'm not going to read everything that is going to be on the slides. I do not believe in death by PowerPoint, so I will allow you to read, expand on those things, and I will add or scatter some points in. So just want to make that very clear. And we'll share a copy of this as well, so everyone can have it to kind of absorb it and give me thoughts. And that's it. I just want to start that way, but thank you for joining today. Excited to provide this cultural segments overview, and we'll get right into it.
Sounds good.
So a company's mission and strategy. So when we talk about diversity and inclusion, I think everyone has their own definition of it. You know, you see where it is here around understanding and accepting, and inclusion around removing barriers. Both segments are super critical in terms of having an environment where everyone feels welcome, right? Each and every day. That's key. You know, it wouldn't be a situation where Daryl and Blaine are sitting next to each other in this room right now if they didn't feel comfortable with one another. And that's across the spectrum of EPM, various personalities, various backgrounds. And the whole goal is that you're able to thrive in a business environment in a way that is conducive to everything that you do. Performance, culture, all those things come together at one point. So I have these two definitions here about D&I and DEI. The way that we define it as an agency is that D&I is how it kind of started for most organizations, for most corporations, in terms of having something in place that connects with various cultures within the workplace. DEI refers to how it has evolved. So bringing in the equity component of it is a big shift change in where it should be. I wish it would have started with that, but over time, everything evolves. Diversity is having a seat at the table. Inclusion is having a voice. And we believe equity is having your voice to be heard. So that's why we think all three components are super critical to have.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna say it again. I'm taking notes. This is
Yeah,
awesome.
we're both taking
A
notes.
seat at the table is a seat at the table is diversity.
Diversity is having a seat at the table. Inclusion is having a voice.
Yep.
And equity is having your voice to be heard.
Having voice heard. Cool. Okay, I'm writing it down. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem. No problem. So there's a difference when it comes to equity and equality. I think a lot of people get those two terms mixed up. You know, of course, equality is everyone having the same thing. So if I gave you a pair of sunglasses, everyone having those sunglasses, or if there's three pair that is shared across your classroom, like, okay, we have the science experiment, we have to use these goggles to make sure we're safe, but we only have three pair for a class of 10. Now, equity is how it's being distributed. So if only 3 people from that class are able to use it, then that's not equity. But if all 10 are able to wear those goggles when you're doing the experiment, then that is equity. It might not be at the same time, but everyone has an equal opportunity to use that resource. And equality is the end goal. Well, I'll talk about it on the next slide. I would say equality is the end goal and equity is the means by which you reach equality. So both of them are essential to one another, but they have very different meanings. So I just want to make that clear. Like, don't confuse equity and equality. I think that's kind of similar to what we talked a little bit earlier about in terms of the seat at the table, the voice, and being heard, right? It's the same thing when you bring in the conversation around equity and equality.
You're schooling us, man. We're taking notes.
No problem, no problem. I'm going to share this with you after, so you know you'll have all this information as well.
Yes, please do, please do.
And you know, when it comes to bias, whether it's conscious bias or it's unconscious bias, either way, it's wrong. That's how I want to start, right? No matter if you know that you're doing it or if you don't know that you're doing it, either way, it's inaccurate, right? So if you feel a certain way about someone because of their background, if you say something because of something you think about someone's background, whether that's their race, gender, preference, whatever it may be, if you make an inference and you say that out loud, or if you make a judgment in terms of a decision for their growth or whatever it may be, either way, it's wrong. And it happens in not only workplaces, but everywhere that you go. The goal is to try to remove that and create an environment where it's non-judgmental, right? Now, when you are judging someone on their performance at work, that's completely different from how you judge someone on who they are as a person or what they reflect. So that's I want to make sure that there's a clear distinction and delineation between the two. I'm not saying that if someone has a work product that's not up to par, you can't judge them on that. But now if someone comes in and they tell you that they prefer to be referred to as he or her or him, if they make that distinction to you, then you roll with that. You agree with that because that is their preference and there's no judgment on that. That's how they would like to be known, right? So that's the delineation in terms of a bias and creating a workplace where everyone is inclusive of that person. Everyone is accepting of those individuals, no matter who you are or how you come.
There was actually a viral situation pretty recently where a woman, a doctor, a Black woman, she was a doctor and she wanted to be referred to as Dr. such and such. But the gentleman she was interviewing refused to give her that title. And so it blew up.
It was like a community town hall and
Yes,
she asked
exactly.
the gentleman to call her that, and he would not, and he ended up getting fired from his
He
job,
did.
terminated
Yes.
for doing that. And I mean, it you don't want it to come to that, right? Because everyone should be that's creating that environment, right? Whether it's a virtual environment, and that was a Zoom conversation, just like what we're having right now, he
Yep.
still had an opportunity to correct what he did wrong, but he
Exactly.
kept doing it over and over
Yeah.
again.
She
And I
literally
think
asked
that,
him like 10 times. Yeah.
exactly. And that's what we're kind of talking about today, is that in those situations, if you're unaware, it's no problem. If you're uneducated on whatever the situation is, just take a second to step back and say, okay, well, okay, maybe I should have referred as that. My apologies. I will refer to you as doctor moving forward. That could have corrected everything. He could have still had his job right now. That wouldn't have, that moment would have not went viral, but he decided otherwise.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. I guess that would have been a very conscious bias.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was unconscious, and then it became conscious. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Wasn't aware of what he was doing, or you might have thought he wasn't aware, but then as things went along, he became conscious of it and then made the decision that this is what I'm going to do. And even in work, if you make a mistake, right? If you accidentally say something to someone that's not like too derogatory or anything to that nature, you can fix that by saying, my sincere apologies. I did X. And, I just want to say from my perspective, that was totally uncalled for, this, right? So there's ways that you can resolve it, right? As long as it's not something that you meant to do intentionally to hurt anyone. And that's a great transition to what we're doing right now with the awareness, intentionality, and transparency. So when we look at this and how employees and customers view company efforts, when you think about awareness, it's a matter of just acknowledging what's there, right? So if the situation that we just talked about, right? If everyone in the company saw it in some perspective on their smartphone, whatever it might be, saw it at home, at work, whatever it might be, you might have a conversation in the lunchroom about it, right? You might have a conversation at the water cooler about it. And then if it becomes something bigger, you're aware of what's happening there, but what's being done, what kind of conversation is being had around that. Like if you and Blaine have a conversation and you say, well, he can say whatever he wants. It's a free world, that is your perspective. But then someone else comes in and says that was wrong of him to do that. And you should treat everyone with respect. And y'all have two differing points of view, two different perspectives, right? But as a whole, the awareness of that situation is that you have to acknowledge that someone did wrong, right? And we take it one step further about things that are happening in the community, happening in society, going back to George Floyd situation and everything that occurred there. If as an organization, you acknowledge what occurred in that situation and knowing what's happening because you have a diverse mix of employees or what have you, that's being aware of the situation and taking a stance, right? So that moves us to the intentionality. That is the purpose. That is the cause. Do your actions match your words? If you say you stand in support the efforts or anything that was around any situation that could be controversial, that's related to culture, race, ethnicity, or gender, sexuality, whatever it might be, right? You had a question? Oh, sorry. I thought you raised your hand in the question. Taking purposeful steps to create change, right? So if there is, you formulate a council. I know you guys have a council, a diversity and inclusion council. That is taking a step forward and matching your actions with your words, that you stand behind diversity. And I know EPM does and always has. And that last phase is that transparency, right? Does everyone know where you stand from top to bottom and from bottom to top, right? If this is what we're doing and this is how we're doing it, does everyone agree with that? Does everyone know that this is how we're going to do it and that I'm being vocal about it? Everyone hears our perspective, our views, and this is how we're going to move forward. So those are three things that are critical from the employee standpoint and from the customer standpoint, because internally, I'm sure you all have conversations about certain subject matters that may relate to different cultures or multiculturalism as a whole, especially with the Diversity and Inclusion Council. You'll also have customers that come up and they want to know what you're doing, your efforts, accountability, things of that nature. And those are questions that you have to ask, but these are three key things that you should always have: awareness, intentionality, and transparency.
Transparency is a big one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. What you do internally impacts the messages you communicate externally. That's key. That's key, because if you say one thing and you do something different, that could come back to hurt you in some way, fashion, or form. That could damage your reputation, right? So what we talked about in the previous slides about all those three steps, that is having kind of a blueprint of doing that. That awareness, that intentionality, and that transparency, you're taking actions and you're communicating that internally, and then that's going to resonate externally. You know, when someone goes to talk about their organization, their company, what they stand for, if they felt one way when they were in the building, that's not going to change as soon as they walk out. That's going to carry them as they go out of the building, and they are a billboard for your organization. They're going to share that with people that are in their circle, right? So if there are things that they love about the organization, they're going to share that. So just be clear of that whenever you're creating any form of message, whether that's a D&I message or whether that's just around the company culture itself.
That's interesting. You say that. We're actually doing a big push for our 4 core training, which is a training class where we actually align our personal values with the EPMs, and we can actually see how they intertwine.
Yeah, the 4 core are our values of EPM.
4 core, we have show the way, we have struggle well, we have own your uniqueness, and we have unified through collaboration. Those are our 4 core, and we want to try to just marry the two together, personally and professionally.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, I just to let you know, guy, I know the EPM way.
Okay.
You know, yeah, look,
that's awesome. You have that. So you see that has 23 in there. So we figured 3 was a lot to try to memorize. Yeah, and absorb. So we broke it down to 4 core buckets, and inside of each of those 4 core buckets are the 23 fundamentals being practiced, but just 4 is more easy to absorb than 23. And
absolutely. That's following those steps, that transparency and intentionality, right? So taking it from something that's, you know, even though everything is great within those 23 and it's still between those 4, just think about how everyone receives it, how they absorb it, how they're able to reciprocate that to other folks who want to know more about it, right? So if you had to tell someone that you had 23 principles or 23 ways, how could you share that externally without having a 30-minute conversation?
Exactly.
Right. Versus I have these 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's you know, that's around those 3 points that we just talked about.
Exactly.
So as Blaine and Ladaro mentioned a little bit earlier, we're going to get into a fun exercise called the privilege exercise. For this, you're going to need a piece of paper, and I need you guys to, everyone's going to start with a score of 0, okay? 0 for everyone. And you're going to create these 2 columns, 1 for plus and 1 for minus, right? And with each question, you're going to total up the sum at the end. So I will forewarn you, I'm not going to read all of these questions. There are 42 questions in all, right? I'm going to go to each page for about a minute and a half. It should probably take you about a minute and a half to read these questions and mark down what your score is for each segment, right? So it's going to say, and I'll go to the first page and I'll give you all a little bit longer, but I'll go through the first questions. There you go. The plus and minus. Blaine has it.
Okay.
Scholar. So for this first one.
Before we go on, let's just check before we go on. You guys, have you got everyone in the audience have a piece of paper?
You can join your phone.
Or however you want to. Go ahead and get your piece of paper, make a cross, and put a plus at the top.
Okay, let's figure this out.
And then we'll be prepared to go on with this privilege. It's this quiz, this exercise. It's going to be very insightful and empowering at the same time. So we encourage everyone to try this out and just see, maybe you can learn a little something about yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm just going to read the first 3 just so everyone is comfortable with it. After that, I'm just going to stick to each page for about a minute or so, or a minute and a half, so everyone can look through it, put down their score, and move on to the next page. Okay?
Is our score something we should share, or is it something we keep with ourselves, to ourselves, or what?
It's up to you. You know, you can either communicate the score or you can keep it to yourself. It's totally up to you. I think it's good to have a conversation, and you know, like, I scored 26, I scored 27, you know, let's talk about it. And you don't have to say like, well, I got a minus on this and I got to put, you don't have to talk
Yeah.
about that.
Total
You
scores.
just see the difference. You know, your score might be 30 and Blaine's score might be 42.
Okay.
It's a difference there because everyone has different life experiences. You never know what everyone's going through. So I think that from that component, absolutely have those interactions around your score. Don't
Okay,
delve into.
So we only have to do what it says. So like for number 5, if the primary language spoken in your household growing up was not English, subtract 1 point. I don't add 1 point since that was the primary, correct?
Right.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm doing right. So can you move
We're
that
going.
up?
We're going to share our scores, Blaine and I. So if you guys feel comfortable, please share your scores in the chat box. We'd love to see what's what.
If you can show your, I'm on number 3.
All right.
Sorry.
Let's start.
All right. And I'm going to do it too. I got my paper right here and
Okay.
I'm ready. And I'm going to share my score at the end just so everybody knows it's not a game. I'm a part of this.
All right.
All right. So first, if your parents work nights and weekends to support your family, subtract 1 point. So put a 1 or like just a scratch mark on the minus side. Okay.
A tick mark. Like
A
spade.
tick mark. Yep. Everybody calls it something different, right?
Yeah,
No
like
problem.
playing spades or something.
Yeah. If you are able to move through the world without fear of sexual assault, add 1 point. So put a tick mark on the plus side.
If you are able to, okay.
If you can show your affection or affection for your romantic partner in public without fear of ridicule or violence, add 1 point. So a tick mark on the plus side.
Okay.
Now, does everybody have that? If you do, let Blaine and Ladaro know in the chat that you guys are good with responding to these questions and actually putting the tick marks under each one. And then I'll allow you to read 4 through 6, and then we'll go on to the next page. So we have 6 more pages of this with 6 questions on each page. So I'm gonna allow you to go through it, go through questions 4, 5, and 6, continue to tally up everything as you go through, and then we'll go from there.
He's good with it.
Okay, so just to reiterate, guys, if it says add a point, you put a mark on the plus. If it says subtract a point, put a mark on the negative.
Gregory says he's done. Greg says he's done. So that must mean everybody.
That sounds about right.
You know,
Okay.
Greg's a beast.
everybody's done.
All right, here we go. Come on.
Okay, we're on the next page.
Well, not me. I'm still.
I move fast.
Okay. You ready on the next page?
Yeah, sorry, people are getting water right now. So if y'all hear something sounding
We're
like,
not peeing.
yeah. Okay, here we go.
Oops, sorry.
If you have ever tried to change. Correct,
what-
Clarence. So if
Clarence-
it doesn't apply, you don't do anything. If you have ever tried to change your speech to gain, subtract all one, yeah. If you can go anywhere in the country and easily find the kinds of hair products you need or cosmetics that match your skin color, add 1 point. Fascinating. If you were embarrassed about your clothes or house while growing up. That was the one we used an example when we was practicing before. I was like, I didn't invite anybody to my house. I was 13.
But so I'm confused now. So there's some ways that sometimes I don't put anything.
So like if you couldn't go anywhere in the country and easily find the kinds of hair products you need or cosmetics that match your skin color, add 1 point.
So I can't.
If you can't do that, then you don't do anything.
You sure? I don't put a mark on the negative.
Correct.
Oh, I've been doing it wrong.
If you or your parents have ever gone through a divorce, subtract 1 point. That's a very traumatic thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
really it should be subtract 13 points. I'm just being silly. If you can legally marry the person you love, regardless of where you live, add 1 point. Add 1 point.
Nope. See, that number 10 is big to me. I want to put like 5.
But you don't do
5,
anything
10.
for that one.
I know.
So I got mine. I think I'm doing it wrong. I think I'm doing it wrong. I need a pen. I have this freaking marker. I need a pen. Oh, it's okay. It's okay.
All right, there's.
All right. Are we good with this page? We're good. We did it. We did this page. Ready. John Crane is ready. We're ready.
Okay. On to the next page.
Okay, number 13. If you felt like you had adequate access to healthy food growing up, at 1 point.
Yes.
If you are reasonably sure you would be hired for a job based on your ability and qualifications, add 1 point. Well, I got that one. If you could never think twice about calling the police when in trouble.
See, the double negatives throw me out. If you would never think twice.
You would.
Okay, so
you
I
don't.
would.
Yeah, you would.
Yeah, so I
If
would.
you can see a doctor whenever you feel the need, add 1 point. That's privilege, because
Yeah,
that's a health
I
privilege.
can-
If you feel comfortable being emotionally expressive and open, why? Add 1 point. Everybody knows I'm super comfortable being emotionally expressive. So if I'm gonna do one thing, is express my emotions. If you have ever been the only person of your race, gender, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation in a classroom or workplace, I can't read the bottom.
We can't see the last sentence on it. Can you? Are you able to scroll down on number 18?
I guess it's gonna be subtract a point.
Sorry, it says status, sexual orientation in a classroom or workplace setting, subtract 1 point.
Okay.
It's full screen, so I can't scroll down. I would scroll, but if I do, it'll take me off the.
Yes, gotcha.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
No. See, this is why we collaborate. This is unifying through collaboration. That's one of our core 4 that we talked about. That's one of our values. So.
Core 4. And when you guys have T-shirts for that, I definitely want one of those.
Okay.
Next. Greg's ready. I'm ready.
All right.
Okay, number 19. If you took out loans for your education, subtract 1 point. If you get time off for religious holidays, add 1 point.
Easter.
And Christmas.
All right.
If you had a job during your high school and college years, subtract 1 point. If you feel comfortable walking home alone at night, add 1 point. Well,
I'm not scared, but
I'm not.
if somebody walks on the street,
First of all, I'm not comfortable walking anywhere.
alone.
Just walking in general is annoying.
It's scary. What if a werewolf?
I wanna scoot. I wanna get on like one of those little bird scooters. Woo woo! Scooter gang.
How far are we walking?
I mean, there's so many questions. If I was in Chicago, I might work 44 miles. So
Can't even walk in.
if you were born in America, we'll switch to number 23.
Okay.
If you're born in America, add 1 point.
Okay, that's an easy one.
Yeah, you were right.
Yes.
If you
think about it.
if you or first or second generation to America, subtract 1 point.
That's me.
Not me. Okay. Well, we're ready over here. We didn't know how to answer number 22 because it's not that we feel uncomfortable walking.
We got cerebral
at night. It's just that we feel uncomfortable walking in general. So we'd rather drive.
If not, then you just leave it. You don't put anything there.
That's how far we were walking.
I know we had too many questions.
Not walking from work to home. Just so if there was a convenience store or if there was a Target or anything nearby that you could just walk to, would you feel comfortable going there and walking back home?
All right.
I went for a walk last night and I felt very comfortable, so I'm gonna add 1 point.
Exactly.
Okay,
So,
there you go. You're good.
But that's but then Greg just said in the in the chat, if you are lazy, subtract 1 point. So I'm back at 0.
We should ask Greg how many times he gets.
All right, I'm going to the next page now.
Okay. If you have ever felt singled out because of your race, ethnicity, gender, or class,
Of course.
subtract 1 point. Or class, yeah. Like you poor. Like if you felt like you were poor, you grew up poor.
Yeah.
If you have ever traveled outside of America, add 1 point. If you have ever felt like I'm reading it, he said we're not going to read every single one of them. I'm over here reading out loud.
I said I'm not going to read them. You can read them. It's fine.
I read. It just has comprehension.
It's okay.
If you have ever felt like there was not adequate or accurate representation of your racial group, sexual orientation group, gender group, or disability group in the media, subtract 1. Well, now. Oh, say have ever felt. Okay, that's fine.
Number 30. I have to add 1 point because my dad was gifted a set of encyclopedias. So we had at least 50.
If you feel confident that your parents would be able to financially help support you if you're going through financial hardships, add 1 point.
If you have ever been bullied or made fun of based on something that you could not change, subtract 1 point. And if you had more than 50 books in your house growing up, add 1 point. Fascinating.
Not adding any of those.
How many questions are there?
42 or something.
42. So we got two more pages on this.
5 more to go. Okay, we're ready.
Ready? All right.
Yeah.
Okay, number 31. If you studied the culture or the history of your ancestors in elementary school, add 1 point.
This one, a very, very watered down version of Black history. But So I don't know. Technically, we.
I wonder if
studied it.
you can make a question of like if you know the history of your ancestors at 1.2.
Yeah,
because
that's
you
better.
know,
Yeah.
like I had access to my genealogy
Yeah, and you know,
way
it's
long time ago. Yeah.
very important for me
Right.
to talk
Exactly,
verbally
yeah.
about my history.
Well, I mean, I would say in this context, right? So you think about you going to school at whatever point in time that you did, when you think about all the things you learned about American history, right? That's typically what you learn in school or civics or whatever it might be. Was a big part of it, about your ancestors, right? So me speaking from my background, it's not like I'm not thinking about just Black History Month. I'm thinking about the whole year round. How many times did we learn about folks from my background at any point in time, whether that's through Egypt, ancient times, BC, AC, AD, whatever it might be? How much of that was intentional and about, that's the thing that you got to kind of consider, right? Because when you think about the collective, the comprehensive is very different from each person. And then also where you were raised. So say if you were raised in the Midwest, or if you were raised in the West Coast, where there might be a large Native American influence, you may learn more about that in your school system versus another place X, right? So everyone might answer it differently. That's my big.
Yeah, that's such a one for me. It's like culturally, European history, I definitely know, right? My family comes from the, Ireland, Scotland, England, different, places.
Yeah.
So I know that, but then there's the queer side of me that is not taught anywhere. Yeah. Really, until you get to college. So it's an add in.
Talk about it in Greek and Roman time. And it was very clear.
I didn't have my first kind of like gay history class until I was in grad school.
Wow.
Okay, we're done with this page.
All right.
This page, you good to go? All right.
All right,
last page.
If you were ever uncomfortable at a joke or statement you overheard that related to your race, gender, ethnicity, appearance, sexual orientation, but felt unsafe to confront the situation, subtract 1 point.
Yeah.
If you currently have more than 5K in savings, add 1 point. I currently
just got there, shawty.
If you have ever worried your cell phone being cut off for non-payment, subtract 1 point.
I'm in college.
You know what I'm saying? If you have never
ever. So in college, if you thought about it, then you got to put that
exactly.
point.
Yeah.
If you have never had to think about your safety when driving, what do you mean?
I legit.
So that's like
about like police. Oh, okay.
Pulled over.
I was like, well, sometimes I get nervous when I'm driving because I'm a terrible driver. So it's,
You should be worried. You should be worried about police too.
Slightly different for this exercise.
If you were able to have a non-paid internship at 1 point, because you could serve. I'm like
you can afford it.
Yeah, I couldn't afford it.
And you could also get that opportunity. Not everybody gets that opportunity to have an internship. So a little bit on both sides.
If you were able to have it.
If you were able to.
Yeah.
Not that you it's not saying like did you.
Yeah.
It's just saying were you able to.
Yeah.
If you did not have access to an at-home computer or internet growing up, subtract 1 point. I did. AOL. Yeah. Okay, so now what do we do?
So add the pluses up and add the minuses.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16.
Oh, wow. Look at mine.
Oh, wow. You're like
so subtract. So take the pluses and the minuses, then you subtract the pluses from the minuses.
Oh, yeah. You're a 0.
I'm a 0.
I'm at 4.
Mine balanced out. I have 12 on both sides, and I balanced out to 0. Did I break the matrix?
Look, I'm over here looking my calculator out because I can't do simple math.
We need to go ask Leaf.
Yeah. You want it? Okay. All right, so that's mine. It's okay. Okay. We got our numbers. So here's mine.
So Blaine is a 4, and I am a big old 0.
Okay. So and I was a.
I don't want to be a
2.
0. You are a 2?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What number? What kind of number
what does this mean?
Greg, what's your number, Greg?
Yeah, Greg, what's your number?
John, what's your number? Clarence?
Everybody, it's just that people had different backgrounds, different circumstances, experiences, everything across the board. So it just shows like kind of where that is. If your number is a lot higher, then it kind of shows you have a little bit more privilege than others, right? That's so if you had a 15, and that means like you probably you were
Greg. Greg's a
Greg is a 15.
the privilege is in his jokes.
Matt Myers,
great. He's hilarious. He's funny. He gets away with everything. John got a 15 as well.
Nice.
Shakira got a 5. Elizabeth got a 9. Beth.
I don't even know what a 0 is.
0 is like not a number.
I don't think I exist.
You don't.
I might
do. You definitely exist.
Definitely. If you're real, this is not a dream. Jennifer got. Hey Jennifer. Cool. We've been emailing.
Oh, Vivian.
So I'm excited to get to know her more. Yeah, Jackie got a 5.
Vivian.
Christine got a 6. Jackie I'm missing 10, 11, 12, 30.
You're gonna send this to me, right?
Yeah, I'll send it to you. I'll send all this stuff to you.
Actually got it.
I'm gonna take it again. Yeah, because I gotta read slower or something.
We overthink, we gotta be like, I gotta read slower. I read it out loud.
I was stuck on that walking thing for a long time.
I was like, walking? No, thank you.
So I'm actually after this one, I'm going.
We were rich, but we were happy.
So we can have a conversation. This is only 1 or 2 slides after this, but I think based on the exercise, I want to get some feedback from the audience. If anyone has questions, feedback from you guys, any questions. But I'm going to play this short video. It's like 3 minutes or so, but it's the same thing we did, but it's in real time. So you take a step forward or a step backwards based on the question. So I'm gonna play the video. Let me know if you guys hear the audio, if you have an issue with the audio. Oops.
Oh. More like an issue with your
technical. Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Let me seeing everything. We see a calendar. Be careful.
It's all right. Nothing there.
You don't know you ain't busy when you said you were busy.
We gonna know now.
There
you go.
There we go.
I'm watching on YouTube. Yeah, just like there we go. Okay, 15 seconds. Oh, sorry. Oh, we gotta go through the ad. Magic Johnson.
I don't believe him. Yeah, money longer than that.
Wow, he's a spokesperson for Old Navy now, and he's fashion designing. Interesting. Oh, she got 6.
Elizabeth got a 6. Nice.
Okay.
All right. So
we can't hear it.
You can't hear it?
Not yet. No.
But she's beautiful.
I said it. See, this is what I'm saying.
She's got great hair. She's got good. Yeah, I do have privilege because I'm not hitting on her, but I'm just complimenting her.
Yeah, that's some privilege right there. Blaine can compliment her.
Well, look at that beautiful hair. She clearly takes care of it.
Can you hear it now?
That's
privilege. Can you hear it now, guys?
Yeah. That's privilege. She said it.
Okay, I'm gonna start it from the beginning.
Some people are born into families where they have to walk miles just to get water. All I have to do is turn on a faucet. That's privilege.
Privilege walk is an activity designed to help people understand the effects of societal privileges. A list of 35 privileges, disadvantages, or each person took a step forward for a step back based on how they identified with this name. Cool. Got it.
I think privilege is when some people have some things and other people don't have things.
I feel privilege is something that you don't even really have control over.
I think it'd be silly for me to say I don't have a fair amount of privilege, considering like the country I live in and the job I get to do and the college I was allowed to go to.
I suppose being a white male will help me end up somewhere towards the front, but I'll take a few steps back from being gay.
I don't think I'll make it to the front. I think I'll maybe be in the middle. That's just the gut feeling I have.
If your parents work nights and weekends to support your family, take one step back. If you can show affection for your romantic partner in public without fear of ridicule or violence, take one step forward. If you were embarrassed about your clothes or house while growing up, take one step back. If you have ever been diagnosed as having a physical or mental illness or disability, take one step back. If you have ever been bullied or made fun of based on something you can't change, take one step back. If you get time off for your religious holidays, take one step forward. If you came from a supportive family environment, if you can see a doctor whenever you feel the need, if you're able to move through the world without fear of sexual assault, if you took out loans for your education, if there were more than 50 books in your household.
I'll be on 0.
So these are your final positions.
You're stuck at 0. You would just go like, we're laughing, but it's serious. Oh, that's not serious.
I think it felt kind of strange for everyone.
It's a hard thing to discuss or even reflect on.
It was very awkward. I think when you can represent it so
Yeah.
visually like this and so immediately, it definitely takes on a new form.
I think we were like all joking around in the beginning. It was pretty lighthearted, and as soon as the questions started coming in, the mood shifted immediately, and we all it was just silent.
Just looking back and seeing like a bunch of people behind you is not a good feeling.
It's like weird how you want to like hold on to explaining a certain privilege, like, oh, but that's not actually me, because like I had to work really hard for that. So it's weird to like take a step forward when you feel like you're taking a step forward with someone else, but you wear a lot of the baggage of like how those things were hard.
It was like more emotional than I thought it would be.
It reminded me of when they talk about slavery in high school and you feel like angry for a few days, but then you just realize like, this is how it is.
For me, it was kind of frustrating almost to look back and see how much further some people were behind me, and realizing that, you know, a lot of that stuff, no amount of hard work or even legislation can make up that gap.
It's interesting being an Asian American because you're not really sure where you fall on the spectrum of privilege.
I know that for me, one of the reasons I ended up so far back was that there are questions around safety as an African American, as a woman, as a gay woman. There are just so many different ways that I don't feel safe.
I feel like I just learned to be grateful for what you have. You know, we're in such a huge society where it's always complaining about what you don't have. It just shows you that for some families, like each family, you're meant to do better. My grandparents did good. My parents did good, and I'll do even better.
I do think if you're not like aware of privilege, you should do this exercise, but it's more complicated.
Get that one.
I'm not even muted the whole time. Oops. That was so serious.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, basically it was, you know, taking the exercise we just did on paper and just making it more of a reality. And it's tough. Like, you know, I've done it at a workplace, and people don't realize, like, they don't understand some of the things that they take for granted, or that we all take for granted, that everyone didn't grow up with that same thing, or everyone doesn't have that same barrier that they might have in regards to things that people think is first nature, right? And when you see everyone in the room, especially like someone that you might be close to at work, and you see like there's a gap, that's when it really hits you. Like right now, we're all in different places remotely, but I promise you, if we were able to do that at EPM's offices or at an offsite, it's going to evoke an emotion, you know, just how you just seeing it. And if you were in anyone's shoes that were in the video, you feel it, you know, like you feel it a little bit differently. And that was, you know, not the purpose of the presentation today, but it is having some of those conversations, some of that dialogue, that interaction that's a little bit uncomfortable. It's not, you know, not to make anyone feel a certain way, but just to know that everyone has different walks of life. Everyone has a different journey to get to where you are today. And knowing that how they got there, that's about creating that environment, that culture at EPM where everyone feels welcome, but no one is being judged for whatever they do on their own right and who they are.
Yeah, we actually
the
have
chats going off about how they, you know, how it feels really emotional, and me and LA are sitting over here trying to make jokes about it because we realize the severity of what's being done, and you know, that's just how we process things, because it is very emotional, it is very real lived, and I think that's what the beautiful, Harold, that you say that it's like it's about realizing that everybody's at a different place, and that you can incorporate one another in understanding that, you know, especially for our dear friend in the back at the end there, like. She had a trifecta, right? She was like African American, woman, and gay, and she was like, and look at me, she was so far behind everybody else. And so, yeah, you're right. We do need some hugs right now. So here's your hug.
I like that we all have different paths to get to where we are, and now right now we're all in the same space. As long as we can just understand and respect each other's past and understand how it shaped us to get to this particular place, then I think it could help us strive in this particular place.
Yeah.
I think this is super
awesome. Yeah, and it's just like, you know, it's like that one chick said, it's the burden of, what did she say? She was like, you walk around with this the curly hair, she had blonde curly hair, on the thing. She was talking about how, like, you know, in this moment, you're like carrying around this. You feel like you're like, oh, I'm stepping forward for
You feel like
this,
you
but
gotta
I
explain
got to
yourself in
explain
some-
it,
yeah.
and because of the burden of like, I actually had to get through this, but it was a, you know,
Yeah.
it's super multi-layered there.
Like
too.
even now, if you hear my backstory and hear how I had to walk to work, whereas you drove to work, you might be like, oh,
yeah,
let
wherever.
me, let me explain myself a little bit. Well, my grandmother gave me this car. No, you bought it. You fine. You earned for it. You earned
Yeah.
it. You know.
Yes.
Yes.
So it is always a good reminder that everybody has a story, that we should never be quick to judge someone. And instead we should just be inclusive, right? What is it?
Who was
we
that?
learned?
Jennifer,
Yeah,
Clarence. Yeah, seeing it on paper is one thing, but seeing it in person and actually blowing it up into real life aspect ratio would be amazing.
What were those 3 points again? Awareness, something, and intentionality.
Awareness, intentionality, and transparency.
Transparency.
Yeah, we were.
I mean so this moment right here, that is the awareness, right? So now, like, you know, seeing and hearing some people's scores and things of that nature, and it's not to belittle anyone or whatever it might be, but it's like seeing everybody, you know, we're all starting with at the same point, and everyone's journey to get here, right? And then you think about the intentionality is kind of that next step of how you engage one another, right? So if I tell LA that my score was 35 and he got a 0, is that going to change the interaction that we have moving forward? Right now, am I going to be intentional about having conversations with LA now that I know that there was a different playing field in terms of how I came about and how he came about and came up or was raised or what have you, right? Or how he feels walking down the street from his home or whatever. Those are all different things that you got to account for, and that's privilege. If you feel safe, right, walking outside of your home, walking up the street, have no issue or anything like that. Not everyone has that ability, right? Not everyone has that. Not saying that someone there does have it, but not everyone does. So when you have a conversation, when you meet someone, and I would say this is the best iteration, right? If someone comes up to you and they ask for something, so someone asks for, they say they're hungry, and you give them food, but they say, I don't want food, I want money, right? There might be a different thing that they need at that time, right? They might want a place to stay, but they didn't ask you for that. They asked you for food, or they asked for something to eat because they were hungry, if that person was homeless or whatever it is. But don't judge that person for asking for whatever it is. They may be scared, they may be in a different situation, but you never should look down on that person regardless of what they asked for, right? And that's the same thing you carry on into the workplace, right? Just like your teacher always tells you, or a lot of people were taught, no question is a dumb question, right? Because you don't know what that person knows, and you don't know what that person does not know. So if you ask that question, you're trying to get to a certain point. So it's just a matter of just being open, building those environments where you feel comfortable, and that even if there is an uncomfortable situation, you do have enough of a relationship or rapport with your coworker or whoever it might be to have a candid conversation, you know?
Awesome. That's awesome.
Very heavy. I hope that
for Friday.
No. This is I mean, it's necessary, because I think that the empowering thing about this, to bring it back around, is not to feel the heavy weight of like, I can't see, in my mind gets in this space of I can't do anything about it, right? And I feel trapped in this, like, how do I do it on a global scale, right? Like, I need to create better inclusion, better equity for others, you know, equality. That is a passion of mine, right? I want to love everyone that I come in contact with where they're at. But I want to do it in a way that affects a lot of people, right? That's just something I do. So when I get this, I get overwhelmed. So the jokes is where I go.
Me too.
Because it helps me like process that burden of it, but it's a very real thing. And so the empowering thing is that, you know, it's like you said, we're in that awareness now. So then you have the ability to be transparent and intentional in how you move forward. So if you see, like, you know, like 0 was your number, right? I'm sorry to bring it back, but
I don't know what to do with it.
It's a matter of, you know, it's ways that things are perceived, right? And Blaine, what you mentioned about, you know, showing that love towards everyone, that's a step, right? That's your intentionality, right? And that's your transparency. Knowing people, you know, that they know that you're going to embrace them in that way, they will feel comfortable engaging you that way. But say that, for instance, you and LA had a big falling out over anything, you know, just saying, and then now people feel uncomfortable having that conversation with you, right? Then it's like you're putting up a barrier. It's like, you know what, maybe I shouldn't have that conversation with LA or Blaine because of what recently happened. you know, but having that openness is going to allow you to embrace and people to want to embrace you to have that conversation. But if you meet them with that tension, with, you know, that judgment, then they won't have that conversation with you. And even if you have a bad experience, continuing that thread of showing that embrace. Because if you have a bad experience, that means that might change everything that you just did. You did everything for naught. But if you continue to do it, that's going to allow everyone to feel good in your presence.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because that's it. You choose love. I read this book. I don't want to get into it, but I read this book that has sat with me so hard. I think you've heard it about 1,000 times. And in this book, it talks about all these things, but she gives this conundrum of like, I'm a doctor in 1857, and I am on a boat that is taken over by pirates. And the pirates save me and make me their prisoner because the captain is dying. Do I let the pirate die, or do I do I save the pirate? And she ultimately said, I have to choose to save because that's the love that I need to do, right? And then ultimately that good deed will create better actions for me. It's a different kind of thought, but that's it. I've been now going through the world where I'm like, okay, do I want to let this live or do I want to let this die? And this diversity, this DEI, as we're going to call it now, right? It is that choice of love, right? You're letting it live in love, and you're saying like, hey, we are different people. We do not have the same background, but we can work together and we can get through that.
Strive, yeah.
So that's the empowering thing about this, is that you have the choice inside of yourself to rise above the implicit biases that are present everywhere, right? And just choose love, and check yourself.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, because it makes for a better environment across the board, right? You don't want to go in a lunchroom where people are going to look at you and judge you or feel some type of way. You can go eat at your desk, or you can go eat in your car, which is not like, that's not an environment that you would like to be in. You want to be somewhere where you feel accepted and you can do as you please, right? Not anything crazy, but having lunch is common, you know? Yeah.
Hey, man, thank you so much for joining us today.
This hour went by fast. I just realized it's like almost one now.
Right?
Wow. That was beautiful. Thank you so much, Harold, for being on today. We really appreciate you. Any last things people want to say before we go? Just real quick. I know we are not trying to leave you with the heavy thing. I can tell a bad joke if you want.
No, everyone is saying thank you. Everyone is saying this is awesome. It's necessary. I teared up. It's very emotional. It's a reminder that everyone has a story. You should never be quick to judge someone. Yeah.
My joke, though, I want to leave everybody with is, where do snowmen get their money? From a snowbank. Okay, so a 9-year-old told me the joke 4 minutes, before we started this, and so.
All right, thank you so much.
So much.
Thank you guys.
Y'all enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your day. Thank you again, Harold.
Please send me this deck.
Yeah.
I will. I'll send it across. Take care. All right. Bye-bye.
Peace.